Picture this: France, the early 1400s. The air smells of smoke and damp earth. Villages are burned, fields trampled, and the sound of war drums never really stops. England has crushed France again and again, and the crown itself hangs by a thread. Now, in this darkness, imagine a barefoot teenage girl from a tiny village walking into the court of the French heir, the Dauphin, and saying, "Don't worry, God sent me to save you." You'd laugh, right? But no one was laughing after what came next. This is not just history. It's a story that feels like a legend. The tale of Joan of Arc, the illiterate farm girl who led armies, defied kings, and burned her way into immortality. Joan was born in 1412 in the little village of Domrémy. Her world was already shaped by war. English raids left smoking ruins where neighbors' homes once stood. Stories of betrayal, of French nobles siding with the enemy, were whispered around every hearth. Her father was a farmer, her mother deeply pious. Joan grew up tending sheep, spinning wool, and listening to church sermons. But the world was breaking, and even a child could feel it. She was about 13 when it began. Visions. She said she saw a dazzling light and heard voices: Saint Michael, Saint Catherine, and Saint Margaret. They told her she had a mission: drive out the English and bring the Dauphin to his coronation. Imagine being 13, being told you're chosen to save your country. Most of us at that age were worried about chores. Joan was told to save France. At first, she kept it secret. Who would believe her? She was just a girl in a world where women weren't even allowed to fight. But the voices grew stronger, more insistent. Finally, she told her family. They thought she was dreaming, or worse, blaspheming. But Joan would not let go. She convinced a local garrison commander, Robert de Baudricourt, to give her an escort to the Dauphin. The man laughed at her the first time, but after seeing her determination, and maybe the sheer desperation of the times, he agreed. Picture this: a 16-year-old girl cutting her hair short, putting on men's clothes, and riding off to meet the heir to the French throne. In an age where women were barely visible in politics or war, she was about to crash through every barrier. When Joan arrived at Chinon, Charles the Dauphin decided to test her. He dressed like a common courtier and hid among his men, while someone else sat on the throne. But Joan walked past everyone, knelt before the disguised Dauphin, and said, "I am sent to you by God, the true heir of France." People gasped. How could she have known? To Charles, it felt like divine proof. To his counselors, it was at least a gamble worth taking. After all, France was collapsing. What was there to lose? They gave her armor, a banner, and soldiers. For the first time, Joan of Arc became a commander. The city of Orléans was under siege. If it fell, France would be cut in two. Morale was rock bottom. Then Joan arrived. She rode at the head of her men, carrying her white banner with the words, "Jesus, Mary." She didn't fight with a sword so much as with faith, but her courage was infectious. Soldiers who'd been beaten for years suddenly believed again. For 9 days, Joan led attacks on the English positions. She was wounded by an arrow, but returned to the field, refusing to stop. And then, victory. The English were forced to lift the siege. News spread like wildfire. A teenage girl, hearing voices from God, had just saved France. To the people, it was nothing short of a miracle. Joan wasn't finished. She told Charles, "You must be crowned at Reims. Only then will you truly be king." It was a bold idea. Reims was deep in enemy territory. But Charles listened. With Joan at his side, the army marched. And everywhere they went, French towns surrendered, inspired by her reputation. On July 17, 1429, Charles was crowned in Reims Cathedral. Joan stood by his side, her banner in hand. The people wept, believing God himself had chosen their king through this girl. For a brief, shining moment, France was united. The tide of the war had turned. But politics is cruel. In 1430, Joan was captured by the Burgundians, French allies of the English. She was sold to the English like livestock. Charles, whom she had dragged to his throne, did nothing. He left her to her fate. Perhaps he feared angering powerful nobles, or perhaps he simply lacked courage. Either way, Joan was abandoned. The English put her on trial in Rouen. The charges? Heresy, witchcraft, and, absurdly, wearing men's clothes. It was less a trial, more a show. They wanted to discredit her, to prove she was no saint but a fraud. For months, learned men of the church interrogated a 19-year-old girl. But Joan did not break. Her answers stunned even her enemies. When asked if she was in God's grace, she replied, "If I am not, may God put me there. If I am, may God keep me there." A response so brilliant her judges were silenced. She defended her visions, her mission, and her faith with a calm strength that no torture could shake. Even her enemies began to see her not as a heretic, but as something else entirely, a martyr in the making. On May 30th, 1431, Joan was led to the marketplace of Rouen. She was tied to a stake, the crowd murmuring in horror and awe. As the flames rose, she cried out the name of Jesus again and again. Witnesses swore her voice did not falter until the very end. When it was over, the English scattered her ashes in the Seine, afraid even her bones might inspire rebellion. But Joan's story did not die. 25 years later, the church overturned her conviction. In 1920, she was declared a saint. Today, she stands not just as the savior of France, but as a universal symbol of faith, courage, and defiance. Joan of Arc's life was short, barely 19 years. But in those 19 years, she transformed history. She showed that belief, whether in God, in destiny, or in yourself, can move armies, topple kings, and echo through centuries. Her enemies burned her body, but they could not burn her story. And that's why, even now, we still say her name with awe. What do you think? Was Joan truly chosen by God, or just a fearless teenager who refused to accept limits? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more history told like a story, hit subscribe, because this is just the beginning.